and welcome to yet another Breaking Conservatarian broadcast with your host, Jeff Charles, your favorite conservatarian. I've got another fire guest for you, Mr. Ross Schumann. He hails from the lovely state of Texas. He is the co-host of the SchuBros Unfiltered podcast, a podcast that I've been on, and for that reason, it is one of the most awesome podcasts in the world.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be your token. I fully accept that I will be your only white guest ever in the entirety of this podcast. You are no longer allowed to invite white people onto the show.
Okay, so yeah, you will always be my first white guest because I am a raging bigot, but everybody else will be Caucasian.
Okay,
We'll
fine
go
with
with
me, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
As long as we have a delineation, right? We
Yes.
got to have that separation, separate but equal.
Exactly. Except
Yeah.
Some are more equal than others. But
Oink, oink, oink.
Yeah. So before we get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background and who you are and all that good stuff.
So, I grew up in Dimebox, Texas, which isn't far from where you are now in Austin, real small town. My dad was a diehard Republican. I remember, the Bob Dole debates. And then my first real taste of political theater was, of course, the Clinton impeachments, where I got to listen to Bill Clinton say, it depends on what your definition of the word is.
Yeah.
And I think I was 9. And I remember going, that's the stupidest single thing I'll ever hear a person say in my life. It depends on what the definition of the word is. And I remember my dad yelling at the TV screen, and I was like, why don't you get involved then? Why don't you run for an office or do something? And so when I got of age and there was an opening, I ran for Congress out in Midland in Texas 11 and failed miserably, to be fair, but it really was it was an eye-opening experience because I got to run a campaign and I got to be part of it. I got to talk to the other candidates, and it allowed me to meet other candidates. It kind of really allowed me to define where I sit politically versus other people that I might agree with generally, but allow me to find the room to disagree with them on certain topics. And what I really found is that I identify as a constitutional conservative. I would consider myself fiscally conservative while being socially liberal. And that, there's a lot of room. I don't consider myself a Republican. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of things in the GOP party that I just simply don't agree with, that I tend to, I would say I'm more of like a Bernie Sanders. I caucus with the Republicans. I would run as a Republican, but I don't truly consider myself to be a Republican. But yeah, I mean, just small town kid. So I split for them on homosexual rights. I don't think there's any room in the Constitution to say that homosexuality doesn't have a place. Again, I think the Constitution for me is about individual liberty. And I'm always going to side with the individual over the government control of the individual. So for me, if you go in your home and you're having a life that you and the other person agree to, that you both consent to this lifestyle, it doesn't really matter what I think of it, right? It's not my opinion. And the reason that I think like that is because I want to be allowed to live my life and be left alone.
Right.
And I think there was some time with my sister in my life where I said, I looked at her and I said, look, you live your life and I'm going to live mine. And I'm going to give you the freedom to live your life however you choose and to do what you choose to do. And regardless of my opinion in the matter, you do what you want, but you let me do what I want, right? You let me have my life and be the way I want to be and live the way I want to live. And it really, that kind of set in stone for me how you should treat others, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if I want to live my life and I want to be left alone and I don't want you to have any say in my life, well, then I've got to give you that same exact privilege. I can't look at you and say, hey, I can control your life, but you can't control mine.
Yeah. And I always appreciate that point of view because, I mean, when you look at the government, I mean, and we're talking specifically about using the government to force people to do what we think they should do. I think what helps with that is when you think of the government like a gun. So what am I willing to point a gun at people for? not a whole heck of a lot. So,
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of whether I agree with what they do or not, I'm not willing to point a gun at somebody and say, you need to do this, or I'm not going to vote for a person who says you need to do this, or we're going to have people come and arrest you at gunpoint. So I think that's a good rule of thumb for probably most things. I mean, I apply that to drugs too. Do I want to point a gun at somebody because they like to smoke weed? I can't see any justification for that. I can't find any excuse to throw them in a cage. Like it doesn't make sense for the government to get involved in that.
Yeah. And I think, for me, I don't know if I coined the phrase. I probably didn't, right? There's no phrases left to be coined.
Right.
Let's be honest. I probably heard this somewhere. I just can't remember where I heard it. So I'm going to claim that I made it up, right? So
there you go. I'll go with that.
If you know where this comes from, at me, I'm fine with it. I'm willing to remember where I heard it. But the right to stupidity is the way I like to say it. Like, I have the right to do things that you think are stupid.
Right.
Regardless of whether you think they're stupid or not, I have the right to do them. And you have the right to do things that I think are stupid. Like, I think it's stupid not to have a gun in your home for self-protection. But by all means, you don't have to have a gun in your home. It's not required. There used to be laws that said you had to have a gun and so much ammunition and so much powder back in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And there was a good reason for that. They were worried about the British coming back, and by golly, they came back. Mm-hmm. But now there's no requirement. So my thing is, like, if we allow other people to deem what's stupid or not stupid for us, then we're going to never get to do anything. Because the example I always give is, if I was a kid who had a high school education and I was going to go into my garage and I was going to start making some widget that was only ever made in big university settings and had never been made before for commercial use. And my two buddies and I were going to go into my garage and we were going to start building these things and we're going to start selling them to consumer public. Do you think our neighbors would think we're smart, or do you think they think we're complete and utterly idiots? But that's Apple.
Yeah.
That's how Apple got started. I
mean,
that's exactly how Apple gets started, and it's the wealthiest company in the world now. So if we have the right to tell other people they're stupid, the neighbors would have told Steve Jobs, hey, you're being an idiot. You can't do this. But because he had the right to be stupid in the eyes of others, he created the world's biggest company and changed our lives drastically, and by giving us, hey, the way we're talking now is a lot thanks to Steve Jobs and what he was willing what the risk he was willing to take.
Yeah. And, and that also, kind of goes into, when you talk about like constitutional freedom. Mm-hmm. And, and I know you're a Republican, or you're a constitutional conservative, and you obviously you side more with Republicans.
To vote with Republicans, yes.
Yeah, exactly. You caucus with them.
That's
right. So, I mean, how do you think that the GOP is doing as far as ensuring constitutional freedoms in 2020?
There's moments they're good and there's moments they're not. So I got in a fight with the Texas GOP not too long ago, and it was while I was running for Congress.
You get into fights a lot.
I get in fights a lot. I'll be honest, bring the hate. I enjoy it, right? Like it doesn't bother me. I'm thick enough skinned. I'm willing to have fights. I'm willing to have arguments. I'm willing to have debates, and it's fun for me. And I do enjoy the role of Twitter troll. So if you're gonna try to troll me on Twitter, I'm gonna go right back at you. I'm not gonna go into my little ball and cry my little eyes out. I'm gonna come back at you. But if you come to me and you have an honest discussion, an honest debate, then I'm willing to go with that too. And I'm willing to discuss. So I've got some really good liberal friends on Twitter where we have some valid discussions where we say, hey, you know what? There's actually some room for agreement here. And we had one on needle exchanges just a couple of days ago where it was like, okay, how can we better control the AIDS epidemic? And how, I don't like needle exchanges. I think, we shouldn't give drug users a leg up. But at the same time, okay, what if we put some requirements on it? Like, okay, you can only do needle exchanges if you're involved in a rehab program with job training, right? Okay, well, now it makes more sense on the conservative side, right? Because I would always argue from the side of, don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of liberals who are, hey, just give them a leg up, get them a start. Okay, I'm willing to give you a start, but I need you to take the ball and run with it.
Yep.
I don't need to be continually giving you a fresh start. So, okay, room for needle exchanges if there's certain criteria met. And I've written some policy on some other stuff that kind of is similar to that. But, for me, it's just right now, the GOP, I think they're kind of selective on who they're worried about with constitutional rights. By which I mean, we see them always going for the religious side, and that's fine. Like I'm a Catholic, I'm a Roman Catholic. I want religious freedom. I'll argue right along with them that religious freedom is important, but I also can't beat you over the head with my religion, right? I can't come to your house and say, my religion matters and yours doesn't, right? Or if you don't follow my religion's not free. Go back to homosexual marriage. And my dad and me vehemently disagree here. I'm a Roman Catholic, and I think as long as the state doesn't come into the Catholic Church and tell the Catholic Church they have to perform homosexual marriage, then it doesn't pertain to me. It doesn't bother me. It's not affecting me. It's not affecting my life. It's not changing my life. Do I believe homosexuality is a sin? Yes, I believe homosexuality is a sin, but I'm a sinful being. So I don't get to judge your sin versus my sin, right? I don't think sin is something you rank. I think sin is sin.
It all leads to the same place, right?
Exactly. So I don't think that as a sinful being, it's my place to judge somebody else who's sinful. Well, there's a state senator from Texas. One of the very first guests we had on the SchuBros was the president of the Texas Log Cabin Republicans.
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to talk to that guy, but yeah, go ahead. So I'm acquainted with the story a little bit.
Yeah. So we reached out to him because they denied them the right to caucus at the Texas GOP convention. And I was like, we're in a dog beat dog election right now. Why are we pissing people off that are going to vote for us? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Right?
You're going to alienate people. I mean,
right, yeah. I mean, why are we giving people a reason to hate us? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense at the moment. And so we reached out to him, and he was one of the first guests we had on the show. And this was pre-COVID, mind you. This is how long ago this was, pre-COVID. And what it was is there was a state senator from up around Tyler or something. And basically his excuse was they don't believe in God the way we believe in God. And it was like, who? Can I cuss on the show?
We're not in church. We were talking about government. Yeah, go ahead. I don't care.
I was like, who the fuck are you? Because, if you don't believe, nobody believes in God the same way. If I put 1,000 Catholics in a room together, I'm going to have 1,000 different opinions on Catholicism, right? And then does that mean that the Republicans can only be Presbyterians or Baptist or Methodist or Pentecostal? Like, which denomination is Republicans going with now? Because that means we don't want Jewish people, we don't want Muslim people, we don't want sheiks, we don't want any other religion but what this guy, how I believe in God. And it's like, dude, first of all, that's asinine. It's one of my favorite words. That's asinine.
Mine too.
To say that, oh, you have to believe in something the same way I believe in something. And then secondly, it's again back to the point of, hey man, we're in a very tough election coming up. We already have people saying, oh, the right hates the gays. Oh, and you got people like me who are coming out saying, hey, look, I have nothing wrong with gay people. I don't mind gay people. You can be gay, get married. I don't care. And then we have this asshat who's coming out and saying, oh, well, you don't believe in God the way we believe in God. So like, go screw yourself, dude. Like, you're hurting the cause. I've got a group of guys who more than likely have more than enough cash that they could donate to candidates because they don't have kids. And then also, they don't like abortion. They don't like taxation. They agree with us on all of the things except for God the way we believe in God. And so you want to sit here and cast them away from the party? Like, that's what was the old story of the Pharisees, casting out the disciples because, well, y'all don't believe the same way we believe. It's like, you're literally the Pharisee in the temple here. God, Jesus is about to come flip your damn table over because...
Yeah, the thing, and we're not talking about like a church government here. That debate would make sense there, but we're talking about like a local government of your city or a government of your state or government of the nation. So, I mean, you're not going to ever have a party that agrees on everything. And I've gotten to the point where I'm sick of conservatives being more known for what we're against than what we're for. I mean, the way I see it, I mean, if you're for lower taxes, if you're for limited government, if you're for, protecting the Constitution, then I really don't care what you do in your bedroom. I mean, that has nothing to do with me. I don't care.
I agree. I don't think it's our place to make these dictations. And again, it goes back to, he wouldn't want us coming into his bedroom and telling him what he could do. He would be against that. That would be a violation of his liberty, right? A violation of his privacy, a violation of his rights, but it's okay for him to do it to somebody else, which is where it just doesn't make sense to me, right? Like I don't have to agree with what you're doing. I'm not saying I agree with what you're doing. I'm not saying that I think what you're doing is perfectly fine and dandy. I'm not saying that, well, I 100% support or endorse your message, but at the same time, I have to give you the right to be able to make that message. And it goes, I guess, back to the right. Again, I'll say I coined this term, the right to stupidity, because I think it's stupid, but that doesn't, it's irrelevant to the discussion, because whether I think it's stupid or not is completely moot, because you have the right to do it. Just as I have 6 kids, right? There's a lot of people who would tell a 31-year-old dude, 6 kids by 31, that's freaking stupid. But yet I do it. I did it, and it's my choice. It doesn't affect you. I don't collect welfare. I don't collect social benefits. My kids are paid for. I'm taken care of. They don't even go to public school. They're homeschooled. You ain't even paying for it on that side. So, let me live and let me be me. But then on the same flip side, I've got to let you be you and let you make the decisions you want to make.
Yeah, exactly. And when that story came out, I actually wrote about that for Red State. So that's how I knew what you were talking about. And I was just like, how does this make any sense? I mean, and even in the comments section, there were a lot of people saying this doesn't really make sense. I mean, I think as far as the people on the right, I think a lot of people are coming around on that stuff. That on the notion that you don't have to agree with everything that somebody does. I mean, it's about having the same ideology. It's about having, those values. So, I mean, I think we'll see that change even more over the next few years. But it's just interesting that happened. And then you mentioned religion. The same type of thing happened in another town in Texas too. And I can't remember what city it was, but there was a GOP official who had just gotten elected, but he was a Muslim. So a group of people tried to get him banned and get him recalled because he wasn't a Christian. And I was like, I can believe it, but I don't want to have to believe it.
Yeah.
And again, I know this wouldn't happen everywhere as far as, what the GOP would do. I mean, this is more rare at this point, but the fact is there's still a lot of those, of that mindset against the other. I mean, if somebody's Muslim, again, you don't have to agree with their religion. I don't need to, kneel down to Mecca 5 times a day. I mean, but if you do, fine. I mean, I don't care. Can we build together? Can we spread the conservative message together?
Yeah, I think where the GOP is failing is, like you said, we're more known for what we're against than what we're for. And I think if our message was, hey, we just want to let you be you, and as long as you let me be me, I think that's a more resounding message across all political spectrums. So, I always love it when people are online and they're like, why would Latinos vote for Democrats? Because their morality, they're Catholic, right? So they would be more morally associated with Republicans. Or why do, Southern Black Baptists vote Democrat? Because they would be more morally substantive with Republicans. And it's like, because they find one thing that somebody in our party is against that they're radically for, or radically might not be the right word, but that they're, that they believe in. And that pushes them to the other side. And so, for a long time, it's been like in the Black community, it's been the issue of equality. It's been the issue of social justice. And then when you look in the Latino community, it's been the issue of immigration. So they're voting on that single topic, and they're voting for that one specific thing because we're failing so hard in our damn outreach that we're not making the message that the other 99% of what you would want is what we stand for. That we're making it about these one, so if I want to go reach out to gay people and convince them to go be Republican, and then the first thing they Google about the Texas GOP is that we refuse to let them caucus with us, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter how much honey I set the trap with. That's what they're going to see, and that's what their perception of the Texas GOP is going to be. And once that's their perception of it, it's extremely hard to fight against that perception, especially when we continually have more and more people who are doing these kind of things, and they're driving these people away, and they're making them single issue voters. So if we can get some of these idiots to stop, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be nice about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because I personally think it's idiotic. You want to win elections. You want to see your style of government be put into place, but yet you don't want people to vote for you, I guess, is the best way to say it. You only want certain types of people to vote for you. So I don't.
They think that going after one type of person is going to solidify victory for the decades to come. And that was true for a little while, but even then, I mean, it's just, it is idiotic.
That worked when we had, okay, let's get into the raging bigot side of this. When white people made up the outstanding majority of the country, that worked. You could go after the white vote and you could win. Especially back, let's say late 70s, early 80s, when most people were not college educated. It was rare that you had college educated. So you needed to go after the non-college educated whites. If you could get the non-college educated whites, you could get those Rust Belt workers, those down south farmers, and those mid-east, people. You had a fighting chance to win every election. But that's not what our populace is anymore. We're much more diverse now, which is it's a great thing that we're much more diverse. We need to celebrate our diversity and look for common ground across that diversity, instead of trying to still say, well, this is a country built by whites and this is a country that should be white. Like, if you're saying that, okay. It's like the message we saw right after the Platinum Plan came out. And I'm sure you saw this. Everybody, well, it's if we've got to go after, we shouldn't be going after the black vote. We should be going after the white vote. We should be going hard after the white vote. And it's like, why can't it be both? Why is it this imaginary binary? Why is it that it's either
one or the Barry Goldwater?
Yeah, why is it either A or B? Why can't it be, A plus B equals C, right? Because we can make roads, and you and I have talked about this. It's marketing. It's not changing our policy. It's taking our policy and making it resound with a certain audience. So if I was going to market headphones, right? If I was going to market headphones to seniors, it would be about ease of use and how I just plug them in and they work and I don't have to worry about it. I don't need any special contraptions to make the shit work or whatever else. If I was going to market it to mid-age people, it would be about the superior quality and how great the sound is and how it sets itself apart. And if I'm marketing it to younger people, it'd be like, this is the newest, best, this is the most hip thing. Your friends are all going to be jealous of you for having this. So we're fine delineating our policy across to these segments, but once it becomes, hey, we're gonna say it in a way where this group of people, this segment of the population understands it and respects it and it resounds with them. Now all of a sudden it's racist or it's whatever. It's like, no, you want these people to vote for you. So you take your policies to them and you say, here's how these policies work for you. This is why you should vote for me, because this is how I'm not making up a new policy specifically for you. I'm just taking the policies I already had.
Yep.
And I'm just saying them in a way. Yeah. I'm saying them in a way that makes you understand the benefit to you, so that you're more willing to understand it and listen to it and conceptualize it, and then think about the ramifications upon your life, and then make a vote based on that, instead of, well, it's catering to a certain group. And if you're the kind of person that saw the Platinum Plan and thought we should be going after white people harder, yeah, you're probably not the kind of person that's actually helping the GOP right now. You're hurting our message, because, everybody, when they saw the Platinum Plan come out, this is what and I'm not black. I've never been black, so I can't speak to the black community, but never, not once in my life. I'm not Joy Behar. I didn't spend a day as a black person. Right. So, if I were in that community and I felt like a certain party had neglected me for decades, and to be true, they have. If I felt like that, I'd be very skeptical. And I wouldn't be worried about what the policy was. I'd be worried about what the people within the party's reaction to the policy is. And if I was on that side and I started reading some of these major Twitter people saying the crap they were saying, I'd go, yeah, it's still the same old racist party it ever was. right? Like, oh, it's just Trump. He's just trying to get elected, and the party is still just as racist as it ever was, and nothing's going to change. This isn't going to benefit me because they're never actually going to do it. It's just election speak. That's what would be my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of alluded to that earlier when you were talking about, you can't go and try to convince homosexuals to come over to the right when you know what they're going to find when they get here. That's the position I find myself in. I mean, because people have asked, do you reach out to black voters? Well, I mean, my audience is mostly white anyway, but I do have a lot of black Democrats who follow me. Yeah. I was on Fox Soul a few weeks ago. That's an all black audience. I have no problem. I don't have a problem making those appearances, and you know me, I'll go after the left all the time. I mean, if you look at my work and read my articles, you'll see me do that. But most of my time is being spent trying to reform the GOP, because I can't honestly say, hey, yeah, come on over here, when I know what they're going to find, when they're going to come over here and find people, spreading lies about the black community, or promoting stereotypes that are half truths or no truths or complete lies, or when they have people that are going to call them, slaves on a plantation, or you know me. I mean, you know the whole list. It's hard for me to say come over here when I know that they're going to be met with that. And they're already going to feel unwelcome, because a lot of them already do feel unwelcome on the GOP, whether right or wrong. That is the perception, and it is a perception that the GOP has earned.
Yeah. So okay. So it was pretty interesting for me, because I wasn't big into social media until I started my campaign. So, I didn't have a Twitter, I didn't have a Facebook, I didn't have anything. I was completely off social media. I had a Facebook way back when, and of course I had a MySpace in high school. But because it was all about that top 8, baby. You had to be on that top 8. But I didn't really consume a lot of media. The way I consume media was mostly through reading websites or reading opinion pieces of people I knew, of sites that I was familiar with. So, Daily Wire, Breitbart, right. And there's a lot of now that I've added to my repertoire that are new, like Red State. That's one now that I've added because of, talking to you and looking at that site. But, back then I would say I was very much into the Candace Owens side of the party. And I was like, oh man, she's doing great stuff and blah, blah, blah. But then I started getting on Twitter, and I started seeing some of the nuance that you were bringing to it, that some other people were bringing to it. And I started thinking about it, and I started going, you know what? Okay, I can see what they're saying because I see it from their point of view. And now it makes more sense to me that, okay, well, there's a place for Candace Owens, and I'm not against Candace Owens. I don't think she's, a horrible, horrible person, and I don't wish her to die, but I can understand where her message could be better. And, there's times where, and you and I have talked about this, where, like you said, where the stereotypes start coming out. So one of the first things you and I talked about was Ahmaud Arbery. I think that was one of the first topics you and I ever broached together. And this was one of the first times where I was really taking the opposite stance of a lot of these mainstream black conservatives, black Republicans, where it was like, wait a minute, like, no, that doesn't make sense. He was just running down the damn road. Why did he didn't deserve to die for running down the road. These weren't even cops. Like they don't get to decide his fate. They're not even, like, you can't even say you're standing up for fucking police here. You're just saying that basically the white guy deserved to kill the black guy because the black guy was running down the road. Like, the black guy has every right to the damn road just as the white guy does. And then, of course, the argument started coming out, oh, well, 5 years ago he was arrested for such and such. Who gives a fuck? Hey, spoiler alert to anybody who doesn't know me. I've been arrested multiple times. I've been held at gunpoint. I've been held at gunpoint by a cop. So I understand the fight or flight instinct, right? I served in the military for 10 years. I was a veteran. I trained guys at Camp Swift right there next to you. I trained pre-deployment training. That, was part of what I did for about 4 years of my military career. And so I'm a little versed in, taking down somebody and, what's correct, what's not. And so with the Ahmaud Arbery case, you start thinking through it in the constitutional liberty side of things, right? So you start saying, okay, they suspected him of breaking into a house. Okay, fine. You call the cops in that case. You let the cops handle it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, they're making a citizen's arrest. Well, where in the law does it say that you can be armed when making a citizen's arrest? It doesn't say you can be armed making a citizen's arrest. It doesn't give you the right to do that. And then, people started, well, they were acting in self-defense. they're not on private property. So stand your ground laws don't work there. You're out in public, right? Like, and then you start going through the video and you're like, well, it's aggressee versus aggressor, right? Like, so you start trying to define who's the aggressee in this situation, who's the aggressor. I would argue the guy coming out with a gun is the aggressor, right?
The ones
like,
that have been chasing him and even hit him with the car before they caught up with him.
I would argue they're the ones being aggressive, and that the guy just running down the road, and what looked like, from the guy filming him from behind, he's running away from you can't argue, he's running away from that guy, and here they come. So, you start looking at it from a constitutional liberty, and you start hearing what these people are saying about, well, 5 years ago. 5 years ago didn't fucking matter. 5 years ago had nothing to do with this situation, right? So their argument was that they suspected him of breaking into their neighbor's house. Well, you go look at the Georgia Stand Your Ground laws, or the Georgia, citizens arrest law.
Yeah.
And the citizens arrest law says you have to actively see them commit the crime. Yeah. Well, they admitted, we didn't see him commit the crime. We never saw him commit the crime. We just thought he committed the crime. Well, that means that they had no right. So you call the cops. The cops come and investigate, right? And that's
not hard. I mean, yeah.
And you would think these guys would have known that, as they were former cops.
Yeah.
Right? So, the question is, who has the right to do what, when? Who has the right to make these decisions? And if you suspect somebody a crime, you call the cops come and deal with it. If you're in imminent danger, then you have the right to protect yourself. But they weren't in imminent danger. They put themselves in imminent danger by being the aggressors in the situation. They put everybody in danger in that situation, because you always have to assume, right? Like, the way I always think about things is, like, when I go to town, I don't know who has a knife, who has a gun, who knows some weird martial arts I don't have any clue about, and maybe he's just going to kick my ass, right? Just because he knows something I don't know. And I'm a big dude, I'm strong, but that doesn't, look, people know shit, right? Like, there's guys out here that can kick your ass. I had a drill sergeant in basic training. They were teaching us hand-to-hand combat, right? And they said, we're going to teach you just enough that you're going to go to the bar and get your ass whooped, because you're going to think you're bad. You're going to think you know it all. You're going to think you're a Muay Thai master, and you're going to go to the bar, and somebody who actually knows how to fight, who's actually been doing it for years, is going to see you, is going to know exactly what you're doing, and is just going to whoop your ass because you don't actually know what you're doing. So that was one of the first times where it was like, okay, no, I think there's some room for nuance here, because while I want outreach into the black community, while I want the black community to see value in voting for constitutional duties, when we go and attack people on the right, when people on the right go and attack people like Ahmaud Arbery, who at the time was doing nothing wrong, it makes it very easy for people from that side, for black people, to say, well, fuck, why would I want to go over there? Yeah. They just made up shit about this guy, and they don't care that he was a human being. They don't care that he was just running down the road or anything like that. But yet you see them get all fucking offended over a girl getting tased at a football game. And it's like, well, the little white girl got tased at a football game. Call the National Guard. But this guy got killed. Like, okay, neither side is right? The girl shouldn't have got tased at the football game either. I'll argue with you there. I'll stand with you there. But if she doesn't deserve to get tased at the football game, he damn sure didn't deserve to get shot for running down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true. I mean, and even going back to the reaction to the Platinum Plan. So I wanted to ask you, as the spokesperson for all white conservatives, why do you think people were so? Because the thing is, before I ask this question, to be fair, I saw a lot of white conservatives that are like, this is great. I mean, they loved it. But I did see a lot saying, oh, we shouldn't pander specifically to the black community, or there shouldn't be a specific thing by race. So, why do you think a lot of white conservatives are still so hesitant or reticent to be on board with something like that?
So, I mean, that's a loaded question, right? But my general thinking on a psychological landing is that everybody wants to feel important, right? And so when you can't claim to be part of this group, you can't claim to be thought of as important at that time, right? So there's a lot of this right now amongst, I would say, some white people that think like whites are being castigated to the realm of, and there are people on the left who are trying to do that, and that's okay, whatever, right? You want to take the city of Philadelphia takes down Christopher Columbus's statue, but still celebrates and takes off for Columbus Day. Okay, tell me how that makes sense. But they feel like they're not being prioritized, and if somebody else is being prioritized, again, in their head, they've created this binary. They've created this 1 or this 0. Either it's me or it's nothing, and they want to be the one prioritized. So when you prioritize religious freedom, well, that's prioritizing them because they're religious and they want religious freedom. Yeah. When you're prioritizing the Second Amendment, well, they want guns. So they're still part of that group. They can still identify as part of that group. But once you say Black or Hispanic or yada, yada, blah, once you identify it down to this certain level, they no longer feel like they're part of that group. And so then they feel like it's not speaking to me anymore, and it's not about me anymore. And let's think about it. Remember, a rational person always acts in their best self-interest. It's always about me, right? People are by nature selfish. We want it to be about us. We want it to be for us. And we don't recognize that we can actually help ourselves. So this goes back to economics. I can do what's my best self-interest, but often my best self-interest is to work with somebody else, is to participate in a market with other people, because the totality of the market is greater and therefore uplifts. So it uplifts me if the entirety of the market is uplifted. Yes, I'm still working in my best self-interest, but at the same time, it's helping other people. But by them getting rich, I get richer. They have more money to spend on my stuff. I could, I told this to a liberal friend of mine the other day. He's like, when we win, we're going to take over Wall Street. We're going to take over the banks, and you guys aren't going to have a choice about it. I said, see, that's where you misunderstand me. I can go live off the grid. I'm perfectly capable of doing so. I can go live in the woods, eat deer, and grow my own food. I don't need you. I don't need banks. I choose to use these things because it's a convenience to me. Right. Because it's it's better to go swipe a debit card. It's a lot easier than carrying cash. But I don't even need cash. I can live perfectly well in a bartering system. I can make now, will I live as well as I do now? No, but if we're talking about changing the system to where the market is where, if I participate in a market, I got to pay this 40% tax or whatever. Well, then it doesn't benefit me there either. So I'm going to go, I'll go take my money and keep it. So I hate to say it that way, but I think there's people who want it, that the non-college educated white, they're worried that they won't feel prioritized anymore. So they'll be less likely to vote for us. And my thing was, I said this on Twitter, if you're the type of person who, because of the Platinum Plan, will no longer vote for President Trump, you are a racist. And there's just no way around that, because you were going to vote for Trump until the Platinum Plan. You liked his policies until he didn't prioritize your group anymore, until it was a different race. You're the problem, right? And I'm sorry to say it that way, but you're the problem. Like, we can't, again, I like when I'm prioritized. I like when it's Second Amendment and religious rights and, keep all these constitutional liberties, but it benefits my party to have more people over there voting for us. So why would I piss them off when I want them to vote for me? We can't keep saying, oh, you're a plantation slave if you vote for Dems, and then say, yeah, but we're not going to give you anything. We're not going to work with you. We're not here for you, right? You're on your own. Go live over there. Because then of course you're gonna go vote for the party of people who are saying they're actually going to help you, even if they never have.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question there, because what you said there is very interesting, because I bring that up too. I mean, Black people want to know, which party is going to do for them. So that tends to get translated to people on the right. It tends to get translated into, oh, free stuff. It shouldn't be somebody who gets elected just to give you stuff. So we shouldn't be going for their votes. But so basically they're saying, we shouldn't be campaigning on what we're going to do for the Black community because the government shouldn't be involved in their lives. I have my answer to that, but how would you react to that type of argument?
So, again, you're wanting to say how your method benefits a certain group of people, right? So I'm a conservative. I believe in these individual liberty values. I believe that every person has these same rights whatsoever. but now I need to make you understand that same thing. I need you to understand that what I want is for you to be allowed to live your life and to be better off because of it. And so I think what people have seen for decades on the right is, hey, you know, we're willing to do things that are business initiatives that are to make businesses better. But again, the Platinum Plan is doing that exact same thing. It's about investment in that community. It's the $500 billion for entrepreneurship. The right, we celebrate entrepreneurship, supposedly, right? So why do we celebrate entrepreneurship when it's a white guy or a Latino guy, but we don't celebrate it when it's a black guy, right? Like, so maybe he has a different idea of how to use the money, and maybe he's going to invest it differently than I would invest it. But again, that's not really for me to say.
Right.
The issue is access to that capital. And so for a long time, I think if you look at the black community, there's been a relegation to non-access to capital, right? Where the black community, people in the black community have felt like we don't have access to get these loans or to get this money that's actually going to let us lift ourselves out of poverty. So it's hard to make the bootstrap argument to people who say, yeah, but I don't even have bootstraps, right? Like, how the fuck am I going to pull myself up by my bootstraps when my shoes don't even have laces? Now, if you're doing it for a style choice, that's on you. That's your decision. I don't want to hear it. But if you just generally can't afford the damn laces, so giving people access to capital and then allowing the free market to work, allowing them to create jobs, allowing that to flow, the problem is that people are saying, oh, this is just for the black community. It's not going to benefit anybody else. Well,
it's going to benefit everybody.
What makes you think that, right? Like if one segment of the market goes up, it drags other segments of the market up as well. If these people have more money to spend, they're going to go spend more money, which is going to mean that the money starts circulating, and then tax revenues go up, everything goes up. And, this is something that's interesting in economics. So, in physics, I don't know if you ever took a physics class in college. You always do your calculations in a vacuum, right? And everybody, you never do your calculations having to consider all the friction equations and all these, other things. Well, in economics, especially undergrad economics, you do all the equations, you do all your factoring in, all things equal. So you say, I'm going to change this one variable and I'm not going to change anything else. But that's not the real world. If I lower taxes, right, like that's not the only thing that happens. I lower taxes, then that spurs investment, then that spurs more spending, then that spurs, blah, 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 and then wages go up and yada, 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 and it's a cycle. And there's, all of these outside externalities to this one decision. And people like certain freshman congressmen from New York who have a degree in economics like to think, in that terms, that everything happens in a vacuum, that everything happens without anything else changing. So this is why you saw all these projections of, oh, Trump's going to cut the tax rate and tax revenue is going to go to shit. But tax revenue went up. And they can't explain it. They have no way of knowing how the hell that happened. Like, they're like, and it's like.
They know, but they lie about it.
Well, it's I think the economists know, but they knew that they could fool the general electorate by saying, oh, this is going to cause tax revenues to go down. And, the big thing they like to say is that, oh, the tax benefits only helped out the 1%. Well, yeah, the total amount of money they saved is larger than the amount of money I saved, but percentage wise, which if okay, I have a degree in finance, I have a degree in economics, and I have an MBA. If you're going to think about things, don't think about them in terms of dollars. Think about them in terms of percents. So you want to look at percent changes. That's what matters. When we look at the percent change in taxable income across the spectrum, the 40 to 60K had the largest percent difference in their taxable income. It went down by like 14%. The 1% only saw like a 2.5% change. Now, 2.5% of $1 billion is more than 14% of 60,000.
Yeah.
That it just, okay. The true numbers are that they saved more overall money because they had more overall money to save.
Yeah. I mean, when you have more money, then you save more money. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. But you have to look at it as who had the biggest impact on their day-to-day lives. I would argue that 2% for a billionaire, he doesn't give a shit about 2%, but 14% for a guy making 60K is a lot of money. Right, for that guy. That's going to make a big impact in his life, and it's going to make it where he can now save more money. And we saw savings went up. People are like, oh, well, it's only savings among the billionaires. Well, no, why would okay, going back to the idea that people do things in their best self-interest. If I could put money in savings and earn 2% on it, or I could invest it in the market or invest it in a company and make 15 to 20% on it, I'm going to go make 15 to 20% on it, guys. Like Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire by putting his money in a freaking, savings account at First National Bank, right?
Yeah.
Like he made his money by betting on stocks and taking the risk, but the risk is worth the reward. They're not going to go put their money in a 2% bank account. The guy who's going to go put his money in a 2% bank account is the guy making 30 to 40K who can't risk that money, who needs that money to be there and needs to earn at least something on it. Those people saw their savings go up. And so the left does this. They change the argument, right? We see it with COVID. It was about deaths. Now it's about cases because we're not having the deaths. So now it's about cases. Well, I mean, okay, we have cases, but we had 61 million H1N1 cases over a year, but we've had 7 million COVID cases. So you would argue that the COVID treatment was better than the H1N1 treatment. Well, but we had less deaths with H1N1. But you just said we were worried about cases and not worried about deaths. You're changing the argument. And you're the guys. Goalposts. You're the guys saying that we're conspiracy theorists saying that it's not as deadly as H1N1. Like H1N1 is not as bad as COVID. You're right. COVID is deadlier than H1N1. So you would expect that of the cases, more people would die. That's just that's how data works. I'm sorry. It's just how it works. It's all about percentages.
Well, speaking of data though, I mean, you're working on a very interesting project because you're going for your PhD, right? So yeah. So you shared a little bit with me and you explained a little bit. So now I have a better understanding of it. But if you could give us an idea, I mean, because so this came about because you wanted to look at how different states do as far as Republican states and blue states and how they compare as far as economics and all that good stuff. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and what you found?
So I'll give you the backstory. So I was having a Twitter fight with somebody who was telling me that California, Oregon, and Washington are much better than Texas, right? Economically, they blow us out of the water in Texas, right? And I was arguing that Texas is pretty good economically. I enjoy Texas. I feel like I can afford things and my standard of living is good and other things. And they started just throwing out these specific variables. And I said, okay, yeah, but that variable is not the entirety of the snapshot, right? So if you say median income, not everybody in the system makes that income. And that just means, okay, so median income's another one. It's not mean income. Mean income would mean it's the average of everybody in the system and what they make. Median income means half of the people make more than this, half of the people make less than this. Yeah. So 50% of the population is below this level, 50% of the population is above this level. So
I remember that from
so if you have a couple billionaires, they're going to throw that number, right? They're going to make that number look higher than it really is. So, what I started looking at was I said, okay, you guys are comparing these very specific variables. And I don't feel that's fair because in economics, we can't consider one variable or one other variable. We have to consider the totality of the market. We have to consider the full health of the market and how
you need a holistic look at it.
And I started arguing things like, okay, well, California is 38th in the nation in education, K through 12. And so if you're going to argue California is doing great, I'm going to argue, well, crap. I mean, the future doesn't look bright because you're tied with Mississippi for education. So, maybe you ought to be doing better. And so the argument I like to make there is that, if it was just about money in education, California should be the number one education state in the nation because they spend the most per student of any state, but they're 38th. So they're not, it's about efficiency. It's not about how much money you spend. Red for ed, they just keep getting more money. They're not producing better results. And conspiracy theory alert, they don't want to produce better results because if they produce better results, they can't go ask for more money next year.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're number one in the nation, they're not going to say, oh shit, you need more money. They're going to say, hey, you're doing good. Good job. You got enough. You're making it work. If you're 38, then you can go argue, the kids, will somebody please think of the children? And we've
got all these dumb children here. We need more money.
we need more money. It's all about more money. And, you know, there's a lot of information in that space. I'm a school choice guy. I'm not a voucher guy. I think that school choice should mean you just can send any public school. Just open up the public school system. There's no school districts. It's not based on zip codes. You can just, if you live in Houston or you live in Austin, you can send your kid to any school in the city that you want to send them to, irregardless of where you live. So if you live in South Austin and you want to send your kids to Westlake and you're willing to drive their butts across town to get them there, power to you, you know, and your kids can go to Westlake. And then, because I do understand that there's people with the voucher system. The argument is, well, I don't want taxpayer money going to religious schools. Fair point. That's a fair point. I can't argue against that because I don't want my taxpayer money going to crap I don't like. I don't want to go into abortion. Yeah. So, okay, fair for you to say you don't want taxpayer money going to religious schools. Fine. I can agree with that. But you should be able to send your kid to any school regardless of where you live. That's just how I feel about it. I don't feel like school districts should have the say in where you can go and, you know, what resources are available to you as a kid. That's not fair. And if your mother or father are willing to make the sacrifice to drive you across town, then that's your business. But back to the study. So I started, and so the story here is I was out on an oil field site because I work in oil and gas. And I was out on an oil field site and I was stuck there for the night and we were kind of not doing a lot. It was one of those nights where it was like, oh, we were down for wind or something, you know, some BS thing. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? This is an interesting thought. Let's start compiling data and let's throw it into a system and let's see what works. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to start thinking of economic variables that are important. So, okay, median income, GDP per capita, cost of living index, standard of living, unemployment rates, percentage of homeless people, which that was kind of eye-opening, educational ranks, economic growth rates, and I tried to take as much data as I thought could be relevant. And then I hate when people send me subjective information. I hate perception studies. Do not send me a goddamn perception study.
So give us an example of a perception study.
Perception study is what you feel about something, not based on objective data, right? It's not based on how the system's actually performing. It's based on how you feel about the system. So one of these we see commonly is, you know, the left will throw out, well, Nordic countries' healthcare systems must be better because if you look at this study, it says that their systems rank higher than everybody else. What it is how people feel about that healthcare system, right? Not how that healthcare system performs on average life expectancy or, survival rates of cancer or any of these other objective measurements where we could actually sit down and say, okay, people in this system survive cancer more often than people in this system, or people in this system, have more access to preventative care than people in that system. Things like that are actually objective that we can actually measure. I can observe data and I can make decisions based on the data I observe. A perception study is just, I feel like it's better, but it's kind of, that's kind of pointless. Okay, so people in
that doesn't tell you anything. Yeah, it just tells me how you feel about it, but that doesn't tell me what it's actually doing for you.
Well, and the funny thing is people like free stuff, right? So if I give you option A, which is a set of Bose earphones, but it's $250, or I give you option B, which is a set of JBL earphones and they're free, you're probably going to take the free ones, right? Because it's free. People like free shit because free is free, and it's like I was talking to you earlier. I will go out of my way to get something that's free. Like, you ever cruise Craigslist and see the shit like, scrap lumber, come and take it.
Yeah, I have seen that.
And you'll see rednecks beating their
people
ass
will
to get
work
over there,
to get
right?
something for free.
Like, oh, I got to get me some free wood.
They'll do work that they could have made enough money to buy it just to get it for free.
It's like, guys, you just spent 12 hours to get shit rotten lumber plus $300 in gas. You could have gone to Lowe's and bought that for the same value, right? But it was free. So people like free stuff, like people are willing to accept crap for free, right? So you can say the Nordic healthcare system is great because people like it, but then when you start studying it based on, does it actually work? Well, no, because they don't have access to preventative care. And then you start thinking about other things like, okay, well, they pay 4 times the tax rate we pay. So is it actually free? Like, is that healthcare actually free? No, it's not actually free. You're paying for it. You're just paying for it in a way that you never saw the money, so it didn't really matter to you because you never had it in your pocket. You never felt it, so it doesn't exist. And that's really it's just a psychological change, right? And it's not really about the actual value. It's about, and by the way, I'm a huge anti-subsidy guy. I don't like subsidies for anything. I think we shouldn't subsidize anything in our market. I think the government shouldn't pay for crap. Because subsidies, a big area of my focus is consumer power. I want consumers to be empowered in a market. I want them to have ultimate power in the market. So what we can do to measure that is we can measure elasticities of demand versus price. So when we say, if I increase the price by 1 unit, does the demand drop by less than a unit, or more than a unit? And that can kind of tell us who has power in the market. So if I raise the price by 1 unit and then the demand drops by less than a unit, well, that means that the supplier is in power there because they have the power to raise their price without losing that much of the market.
Yeah, they're still getting a net profit.
Yeah, they'll get a net profit. So, the bell curve of revenue, right? Marginal revenue is a bell curve. It doesn't work in a straight line because at some point you're going to start getting less customers and your overall marginal revenue will go down. So the marginal revenue is the revenue you get off of the next item sold. So, it may actually be less because you raise the price by $1, your marginal revenue might actually go down. So when we start looking at that, we start saying, okay, who has the power in the market? Well, when we look at subsidies, I argue that subsidies always flip the power curve to the supplier and away from the consumer. And it's a neat trick in consumer psychology because you think you're getting it cheaper. You feel because you're paying less, but you're forgetting the fact that the money the rest of the money that's coming to them is your money. It's still your money, right? Like the government doesn't have money. The government doesn't have money. They have no way to raise money. The only way they have raised money is from you. So you're paying for it. So when they talk about the cost of solar and wind, well, solar and wind are just as cheap as, because we're subsidizing the crap out of that market. So no, it's not actually as cheap because we're spending so much government money on it. They're not actually economically profitable. Windmills are actually an economic loss without the subsidy. Take subsidy away, nobody did windmills. They'd quit building them because they don't make money. So I argue that subsidization, you look at healthcare. We subsidize healthcare, premiums rose by 60%. We subsidized education from the 70s. Tuition went up much more than the rate of inflation, right? So all we did, and let's think about it in terms of this, right? So if I say the cost of education in the 70s was $700, so that's what you would have paid. And now the government's going to give a $300 subsidy towards that. Well, if I'm the school, I say I just have to be cheaper than what they would have paid. I don't have to give them a $300 discount because they never saw that. That to them is irrelevant. I just have to be cheaper. Yeah. So I can raise my price by $200. You're still net $100. So you think it's a good deal. But the school now made $900. Yeah. And in the next year, when the subsidy went up, they raised their prices again, and they raised their prices again, and they raised. So you started thinking, oh, it's just normal rate of inflation. Nope. They're making hands over fist more money. This is why everybody, the left, we hate insurance companies. Then why did you vote for a bill that gave them record profits? The ACA has given insurance company record profits. Everybody, the insurance companies don't want protections for these people because pre-existing conditions. They're making record profits now, right? Like why would they be against it? This is the most money they've ever made. This is the best time in the world for insurance companies. And you can argue, and okay, so it's like the Bernie Sanders argument. Well, yeah, the reason our healthcare costs are so much is because of the amount of costs we have in administrative. That's true. But his solution to that is to add more administrative costs. I don't know. Okay, so back to the study because we keep getting sidetracked, and I'll sidetrack for years.
That's all right.
What I wanted to do is take all of these variables, and by all means, if you see the screenshot and you think there's a variable I'm not accounting, send it to me. I'll add it in. I don't mind. I like, again, it's objective data. What I then did is I took all the data, I compiled it, and I ranked every state. Now, I included the District of Columbia and I included the United States as a whole because I kind of used the U.S. as a control. I said, well, if the U.S. comes in the middle of the study, then that should be relatively true because the U.S. is an average of all states. So it should be relatively in the center. If it's in the bottom quarter or the top quarter, then maybe I screwed up somewhere. Maybe my approach wasn't very true. So what I did is I ranked all these different states and the District of Columbia and the U.S. as a whole. I just ranked them 1 through 52 in these variables. I compiled the data for that variable, whether it be median income, GDP per capita, cost of living, whether it be unemployment rate, whatever. I got the data and then I ranked them 1 through 52. And then I took those averages and I averaged it across. So if you were number 1 here and number 50 here, then you've got an average of 25. Of course, it's across all of these different variables. So you'll see that North Dakota is number 1 with an average of 9.4. So they average the lowest. This doesn't mean that they're the best state in every category. It just means that their average rank in all of these categories is the best. And what I use this for is to kind of rank where the states are compared to one another. And not just look at one variable, but look at all of these variables and look at how all of these different things tie in to the economic condition of the states. And then
and just to give people an idea of what the variables that are on here. I mean, there's the unemployment rate of each state, the percentage of millionaires, percentage of homeless, violent crime rate, education rate, economic freedom, economic growth. All of these are elements that you've put into the spreadsheet here.
Yeah.
That people might find to be important. People think different things are important, but these are all different variables that could influence whether or not somebody thinks one state is better than the other. And these are objective measures. This is actual data that you've collected. This isn't your opinion. This is the data that's out there for each of these elements.
Yeah, and so, what I always do when I compile a data list like this is whatever the source is that I've gotten this data from, I put it in a link. I put the hyperlink below that column. So then if anybody ever says, oh, well, where'd you get that data from? I can just go, oh, well, click, it's right there. You can go see the website I got the data from. If you don't agree with that website, that's fine. You can send me a different website and I'll consider it. But one of the things I'm going to consider, is it a perception study or is it a objective study? Right. If it's a perception study, I'm probably not going to consider it. If it's objective data that I can measure and it's observable, then I'll probably measure it. And so, we keep hearing, oh, the left states keep saying it's about economic inequality. But yet their states have the highest rate of economic inequality.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of California. I just heard somebody else make that argument too. They're always talking about economic inequality, but California has one of the widest gaps there.
So if I was to rank states by percentage of millionaires, right, California comes in number 7. We're at, let's see here, 8.51%. 8.51% of the population of California are millionaires, right? That's what something KP lingers, some long ass damn. Okay, all 50 states ranked, whatever. Then if I was to sort homelessness, you would say, well, if economic inequality is true, if they're reducing economic inequality with their policies, they shouldn't have very many homelessness. If they have this many millionaires, then it should be bringing everybody up. Their policies should be bringing everybody up. But then if I rank economic, they come in 3rd in unemployment or homelessness. So they have the 3rd most homelessness and the 7th most. And I'm looking at it in Excel, so I can literally just click the button and re-rank everything based on that criteria, based on that variable. So whereas you're actually having to sit there and look through the column.
Actually having to look through it. I just have a screenshot. Yeah.
I'm just clicking that button on top of it and sorting it. And I'll send, I've put this Excel file out before, and I'm happy to put it out again. And again, I'm not adverse to people making suggestions. If you say, hey, you know what, I think this variable is important, I'll consider it. That doesn't mean I'm going to add it, by the way. It just means I'll consider it.
Yeah.
I might, and then I'll probably message you back and say, this is why I think it's not important, or this is why I don't think it's a good variable, or whatever. Or I'll tell you, hey, that was good. I'll add that in. And like one of the things I hadn't on my original one, I hadn't included was education rank and economic growth percentage. And then somebody kind of said, hey, well, education is an indicator of future economic performance, economic health,
Oh,
because
okay.
as kids are smarter, they're more likely to be more beneficial to the economy. And then, of course, that ties into economic growth percentage. Well, we want to see how well our economies are growing. And so we keep hearing from Californians that, oh, this is the best economy in the nation. Well, that would mean that their growth rate should be high, right? But
Yeah.
they have, the 12th smallest economic growth rate, and Texas has the second highest. So
Oh.
I would say, yes, is the total economy of California higher than Texas right now? Yes.
But it won't
But
be
we're
forever.
growing
Yeah.
faster than they are. We're growing at a rate of 5.1%. They're growing at a rate of 2.4%. So we're growing twice as fast as they are, which means we're catching up. And we rank better than them marginally, educationally. We rank way higher than them in economic freedom. We rank way better than them in standard of living. We rank way better than them in violent crime rate and all of these other variables. So if you're just going to look at median income, okay, California wins, right? Well, actually,
Yeah.
the District of Columbia wins because they have so few people and so many of the people there make so much money.
But that's an interesting point. And what I like about this, because I don't know much about economics. I have a very basic understanding, and it's one of those things that I want to learn more about. But what I like about this is that it is a good way to counter that argument with California. Yeah, their economy may be doing better right now, but one, Texas is growing, and Texas beats them in other categories. It's not just the GDP or however much it produces. It's also how are people living there. I mean, and with a homeless rate that's higher and a crime rate that's higher, that economy doesn't mean as much when you can move to another place that has a lower crime rate. I mean, and better education, or there's a lot of other factors that go into determining which state is better than the other, and some of it is subjective because there might be factors that some people care about and some that they don't care about. It's a personal choice. Yeah.
Now, so and with that, I want to put this out there that I've tried to be as unbiased and keep my bias out of this as much as possible. Now, of course, I chose the variables that went in it, so there's a bias there, but I didn't weight any of the variables. I didn't apply any selective weighting because I could have said, oh, I think unemployment rate is twice as important as percentage of millionaires. So
can you explain what you mean when you say you didn't add weighting? Well, what is weighting for the people who don't know?
Weighting would be making one variable more important by or less important by, let's say that I wanted to make you seem, Texas ranks number one in this category. So the way I can make California look worse if they rank low is take all of those ranks and multiply them by 2, right? It's going to hurt the guys at the bottom more than it's going to hurt the guys at top, because the overall average, right? It's going to hurt you more to have 100 than it's going to hurt you to have a 2. So if you were number 1 and the other state was number 50 and I multiplied, say, that rank by 2 in the consideration of the overall average, it means that variable becomes twice as important as all of the other variables to the overall average. So instead of imputing my own bias here, because I think percentage of homelessness is hugely important, I think it's drastically important that, so, okay, let's look at percentage of homelessness again. I'm going to sort from largest to smallest. The United States as a whole has an average unemployment rate, a homeless rate of 0.17%. Well, New York is number 1 with 0.47, 3 times the national average. California is third with 0.38, so more than 2 times the national average. So you would say, oh, well, yeah, but the U.S., they're only a couple spots. Well, no. They're only a couple spots ahead in that category. But again, we're changing the argument. It's about the percentage change. Right. Because we look at all these other states at the bottom and they're clumped very close together. The standard deviation between them is very small, whereas when we get into those top states, the standard deviation becomes very large from the mean. So we look at, I don't have data for the District of Columbia, so throw them out. We look at Texas at 0.09% homelessness rate. That means that you're at 3 times, doing the math quickly in my head, 4 times California is 4 times as many homeless people per capita as the state of Texas. Yeah. And again, this is about a percentage.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is that with California, I mean, between Los Angeles and say San Francisco, all that area in between, that's not where the homeless people are.
Nope.
They're concentrated in the cities that have the highest populations, of course. So most people in California live in one of those cities, and other cities as well. I mean, I'm just generalizing. But I mean, most people live in those cities, so they're more likely to experience the homelessness.
Yep.
Now, Texas, you said it was 0.09. Every single one of those people are in Austin right now. So, no, I'm just kidding.
They're in Governor Abbott's camp, that little camp he built there off 183 or wherever it is.
Yeah, I went there, Camp Rat. Yeah.
So, and then you look, okay, so then you look at percentage of millionaires, and you would say, okay, so if California is so much better, it would have it would have the same factor, greater percentage of millionaires and unemployment or as homelessness than from Texas. But Texas comes in at 6.32% of our population are millionaires versus California, which is 8.51. So it's not even 1.5 times. It's like 1.25 times as much. So it's one of these things where, like, okay, people want to say median income. Median income is great. California has a median income 10% higher than the rest of the country, but their cost of living is 50% higher. So yes, you're making on average 10% more, but you're paying on average 50% more. So are you actually better off? Are you actually in a better economic position than you would be if you lived in Texas?
And the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, I'm from California. Now I'm in Texas. And everybody knows there's a lot of us here in Texas. They're not liking it, but other states too. I mean, all those variables that you laid out and all that data adds up to what? It adds up to people leaving California. I mean, and people aren't going there as much as they're leaving. So, I mean, there are reasons for that. Obviously, California does have a lot of advantages, but in other variables, it's lacking.
Yeah. So just as a facade for all the people in this, in this discussion that want to know, California in my ranking comes in 43rd out of 52 overall economic strength. They're tied with Alabama in overall average, right? So when you show people from California that kind of like kicks them in the head, like, you're not as good off as you think you are. Texas comes in 17th. We're not the best state. There are better states. North Dakota's number 1. I didn't expect that. Massachusetts is really high, is number 5. That was kind of shocking to me. I figured Massachusetts would be lower.
Wow. Yeah, you would think so. Yeah.
But again, the whole point of data is to take the data, apply it, and see what the results are, not make the results what I want them to be.
Right.
One of my data analytics class, my professor in my data analytics class, she basically told us, I can make the results of this be whatever I want them to be. I can impute my bias, and I can make the results however I want them to be. I can take any poll and I can make it say what I want it to say. Yeah,
I was about to say that. Same thing with polling. I've been learning a lot about that as well from Red State. I mean, Scott, one of our writers, is a polling expert. So I've been learning a lot about how they can skew polls to make it say what they want it to say. It's the same thing here with economics.
You change what questions you ask, how you ask them. You change what time of day you call. You change all of these different things, and it's going to give you different information, right? So, I argue that I've never been called by a pollster. I'm a target age demographic for what a pollster would call, but I've never been called by a pollster. And then, I always look at these polls. They're national polls. And the first thing I go to is sample size. That's the first thing I go to. And when I see a sample size underneath 0.0001% of the total population, I just go, don't care. I don't care about this poll because it's such a small sample size that you cannot say that it represents the generation at all. If I can fit every person polled in one floor of a major building, it's not a good poll. Right? If I could take everybody coming out of the Chase Bank Center in Austin off of one floor, poll them, and say that's the entirety of this sample size, then I'm sorry, to me, that's not a valid poll. And then another thing you can look at is, are they oversampling one size versus the other? Are they are they purposely undersampling?
Yep.
Are they, a guy asked me the other day, he goes, well, how do I tell if it's a good poll or a bad poll? And I said, well, first of all, any poll has the possibility of being a bad poll no matter how well it's done, right? Margin of error is extremely important. If they've got a super high margin of error, it's probably not a good poll. But the second thing you look at is, what was their method of data collection? If the method of data collection is not specified, they refuse to tell you how they collected the data.
Yeah, if the methodology isn't there, it's trash.
Then it's probably trash. If they refuse to tell you the demographics of the poll, then it's probably trash. Because they're purposely hiding information that could skew the poll one way or the other.
Right.
That's how I think about it. I think, okay, why are they not telling me this? Why do I not know how many Democrats versus how many Republicans versus how many independents they polled?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that not shown? And then if I don't see, okay, this was done via phone bank, this was done via text message, this was done via this, because all of those things can play a consideration. Well, if I send it via text message, that means that young people are more likely to reply than older people. Okay.
Right.
If I send it, if it's via phone bank, that means, okay, you're calling between 8 and 5. That means people who are at home in those times. So stay-at-home moms and people who don't have jobs. Right. And let's not make a generalization, but people who don't have jobs tend to vote for their paychecks. And since their paychecks come from the government, they more likely to vote for those guys. Right. Ben Franklin said the day that people the day that people realize that they can vote for their own paychecks will be the end of the republic.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin has a ton of very good quotes, by the way. Just go look at Ben Franklin quotes. It's just, you can go on for days.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm really happy that you shared that with us. I mean, we're gonna have to have you back on. I mean, because this stuff gets so deep that you can't just cover it all in one thing. But I even just in the little bit, I learned a lot from what you were talking about there. So I'm sure I'll be asking you a lot of questions offline as well.
Yeah.
But before we head out, I mean, give your social media, let people know where they can find you.
So the nice thing about what I'm doing is you can see it right here below my arms. I'm at Ross Schumann, and my brother over here, Kyle's over here. I'm over here. I got to figure out which side my hand's on. At Ross Schumann, that's at Romeo Oscar Sierra Charlie Hotel Uniform Mike Alpha November. Now again, that's Romeo Oscar Sierra Charlie Hotel Uniform Mike Alpha November. If you can't tell, I was in the military for 10 years. That'll give you the clue. Kyle is at Kyle Schumann 08. We're both on Twitter. You can go find SchuBros Unfiltered on Facebook. I don't do much with the Facebook page. I'll be honest. It's Kyle that runs the Facebook page. We're happy for Twitter trolls. We're also happy to have lively, spirited debates with people and discuss things. Mind you, I have 6 kids and I have a job. So there are times like people are like, well, you just quit the conversation, so I win. It's like, no, dude, I have a life. I have things to do, right? Like, okay, it's Saturday morning. My kid's playing a football game. I put the phone down for 2 hours so I could watch my kid play a football game. And then, on YouTube, we have the SchuBros Unfiltered. We're through Zero Gravity Media. So if you search for Zero Gravity Media on YouTube, you'll find it's mostly our content on there, but you do see some of the other guys that have shows on there, their content as well. Content varies from show to show. I mean, the great thing about our platform is it's all about free market, capitalistic thinkers, and we're not about subjecting speech. So Kyle and my show, it's a vastly different show than anybody else. So maybe you don't like exactly what Kyle and I do, because we're more of the joke and have fun and talk about sports and talk about shit we find interesting. Whereas if you want the deep dive, conspiracy theory kind of stuff, well, then, Russ and Luke might be your guys on that side, because they like to go into the 4chan stuff and they like to go into the, the Reddit side. And it's like, sometimes that side's a little far out for me. But the nice thing is there's stuff for everybody. So yeah, at Zero Gravity Media on YouTube. You can find Kyle and I on Facebook. They're SchuBros Unfiltered. Our shows are live broadcast on YouTube and on Facebook. We broadcast every Thursday at 9 p.m. We used to broadcast more often, but unfortunately with Kyle having a baby, me having a baby, and other schedules, and me starting school back up, we had to go to 1 day a week. But we always live stream. We always have the chat open. So we're always, we're talking about the topics of the day. If you feel like you want to join in, you feel like you want to be a part of it, you have something to say, you have something to add, go ahead. And every now and then we get knuckleheads like Jeff to come on and talk about fun stuff that we think are interesting. And, we just we're trying to learn. We're trying to have conversations. We're trying to figure things out and give our opinions on them. And, the thing Kyle and I love to say is that our opinions will change. We reserve the right to hear more information and then make decisions based on that further information.
That's important.
Yeah, because, it's the Ahmaud Arbery case. Everybody, if you'd have just taken the information, the snapshot at the first day, you'd have had this opinion. But then as more information came out, as you found out more and more and more about the situation, you started going, wait a minute, that's not what I thought initially. There's a whole other thing happened. And so, it's the same with the Breonna Taylor case. What was it? 2 days ago, somebody posted a picture of Breonna Taylor holding the gun. And they're like, yeah, this is proof that she deserved to get shot. Like, if she was a little redheaded white girl, she'd have 1 million Twitter followers.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point.
Like,
Yes.
I take pictures with my guns. Do I deserve to get shot for it? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out. Thanks for giving us a little bit of education, and we'll have you back on soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.